A roundup of the day's top news is coming up next on Freedom. This is Our Time. My name is Mikhail Baranos. Hello. The situation in the Kupyansk direction has been stabilized, and in Kupyansk itself, more than 200 Russian occupiers are surrounded, according to the command of the Ukrainian National Guard Corps, Khartia. The city, whose capture was claimed by dictator Putin just a few days ago, was visited today by Volodymyr Zelensky. In his video address from Kupyansk, the president of Ukraine emphasized that it is extremely important to achieve results on the front lines so that Ukraine can achieve results in diplomacy. Wishing you good health.
Good health to you. Today, the Kupyansk direction.
Wishing you good health. Today, the Kupyansk direction. Our soldiers here are achieving results for Ukraine. The Russians talked a lot about Kupyansk. Monsieur, I was there, congratulated the guys. I thank every unit, everyone who is fighting here, everyone who is destroying the occupier. Today, it is extremely important to achieve results on the front so that Ukraine can achieve results in diplomacy. That's exactly how it works. All our strong positions inside the country are strong positions. In the conversation about ending the war, thank you to every warrior. I'm proud of you. And I thank all our ground forces. Today is truly your day. Thank you, guys. Glory to Ukraine. Last night, the Russians attacked the Dnipropetrovsk region with strike drones. In Pavlohrad, a local resident was killed and 4 more were injured. According to Vladislav Ivanenko, the acting head of the regional military administration, 5 private houses caught fire, one of which was destroyed. In addition, fires and damage in the residential sector were recorded in the Vasilkivka and Pokrovska communities. No casualties were reported. More than 90,000 subscribers in Odessa and the region remain without electricity. As a result of the Russian attack last May, there are problems with water supply. Critical infrastructure and businesses have switched to generator power. Public transportation is experiencing disruptions. Russian occupiers once again struck at the region's energy infrastructure with drones. In Odessa itself, an apartment building, warehouse facilities, and an administrative building were damaged. There is no information about any casualties. On the night of December 12th, the Russian army attacked one of the state-owned coal mines with drones for more than 6 hours. As a result, a fire broke out on the premises of the facility. 2 mine workers were injured. They are receiving medical assistance. This was reported by Deputy Minister of Energy, Roman Ondaryuk. A total of 18 drone strikes on the facility have been recorded.
You see, history doesn't know. Examples?
Modern history does not know of any examples where the energy system of a single country has operated under such conditions, under such large scale and targeted terror. And this terror, unfortunately, is intensifying every day. Just this year, the Russians have already launched 1,800 missiles and 50,000 drones at Ukraine. 4,500 times. They tried to destroy our energy facilities. Work to restore the damaged infrastructure is ongoing around the clock. I want to emphasize we're not just talking about local repair crews, but also about complex engineering solutions. Often, we have to rebuild destroyed systems from scratch. Unfortunately, this takes time. But our energy workers are doing everything possible to reduce the number of outages. The National Police showed footage of Konstantinivka destroyed by the Russians. Before 2022, 78,000 people lived there. Today, only about 5% of the residents remain in the city, roughly 4,000 people. Last week, 300 people were evacuated. Konstantinivka is an industrial center that Russia has turned into ruins. Apartment buildings have been burned, schools and churches destroyed. The city and surrounding villages are under daily shelling. There's no water or electricity, and gas supply was cut off back in the summer. Forced evacuation of families with children continues in Konstantinivka. Combat activity along the front line remains extremely high. In the past 24 hours, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine recorded 174 combat clashes. In Alexandrovsk direction, the Russians launched 26 assaults, and in the Pokrovsk direction, 49. It tends to push back Ukrainian units. Heavy fighting also continues in the Lyman, Huliaipol, Orikhiv, and Konstantinivka directions. And now let's return to the situation in Kupyansk. Exclusive for Freedom. Yuri Fedorenko, commander of the 429th Separate Achilles Unmanned Systems Regiment, will comment on it. Yuri, hello.
Glad to have you with us. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes. Please tell us the details, of course only those that can be shared on air, about the counteroffensive operation of the Ukrainian Defense Forces in Kupyansk. How did it unfold, and what is the strategic significance of this success by the armed forces of Ukraine on this section of the front?
Let me correct you a bit. It would be more accurate to say not was carried out, but is being carried out. That's the first thing. The second thing we should mention, the enemy, taking advantage of a certain situation that existed, in previous periods of time, managed to enter the northern outskirts from the city of Kupyansk and take up positions that allowed them, with their sabotage and reconnaissance groups, to infiltrate the city of Kupyansk itself. As a result, the enemy was not able to capture a single district where they could establish themselves, and such a district could be considered under enemy control. But the presence of enemy forces in the city itself was quite significant. The defense forces carried out a series of active measures, which have already been ongoing for more than half a year. At the time when the dictator, Putin talks about someone being surrounded, about them having taken Kupyansk, but in reality, the defense forces managed to clear the enemy from the northern outskirts of the city of Kupyansk, as well as suppress sabotage and reconnaissance groups within the city itself, those that had been dispersed. In the basements, in the shelters, they tried to control certain areas, but ultimately failed to do so. Kupyansk Left Bank and Kupyansk Vuzlovi are under the full control of the defense forces, and as a result, the enemy's numerous assaults ended in failure for them. As you can see, the situation has now been so thoroughly handled by the defense forces. Has changed for the better, as you saw today. The president of Ukraine, who recorded an address from Kupyansk, congratulated those whose shoulders have borne the hardest work in the defense forces. These are the ground forces who are holding combat positions, carrying out offensive actions, and striking the enemy. Also, what should be said about Kupyansk is that the stabilization of the situation and the results currently being achieved by the defense forces are made possible by various units. These include the National Guard of Ukraine, the ground forces, the National Police, the Military Law Enforcement Service, the Security Service of Ukraine, and the drone forces. And despite the fact that these are different security agencies, everyone works together as a single, well-coordinated mechanism. That's why we are able to achieve results against the enemy. Not just striking, but actually driving them out of all the areas they previously tried to take under their control. I have to say that. The defense forces have provided the necessary arguments. Now, including for the President of the United States, who doesn't always see the objective information about what's happening on the battlefield, what's happening in our country. And today, the recording of the address to the Ukrainian people near the Kupyansk monument by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, is a very clear signal about security, about the real situation is happening in Kupyansk. The President himself, the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, was able to be in that place safely. It's very close to the enemy. And I don't know of any other leader at any time in the past century who has been so close to the front line. Here, we need to talk about Volodymyr Zelensky's courage, and we need to acknowledge that the defense forces have achieved the impossible. And I'll let them. Let Donald Trump open his eyes wide and take a real look at what's happening in Ukraine on the front lines instead of reading Soviet newspapers at night.
Indeed, this is a powerful signal, a message for Washington, especially on the eve of the negotiations that are supposed to take place there. Yuri, as you noted, Russian generals promised Putin they would capture Kupyansk, but as we can see, the invaders' plans are falling apart, and as you also said, this is proven by Volodymyr Zelensky's presence. As for how safe it is in the city, we can already tell just from the footage we have from there. Do the Russian occupiers still have the ability to keep trying to retake or capture Kupyansk? What is the situation in that direction?
Of course, what did the enemy do? Now the year is coming to an end, and they are summing up what they managed to achieve in Ukraine in terms of occupying our territories, what losses they suffered, and how many resources they spent to get these results. As a result, among the command ranks at the tactical level, commanders, regiment leaders of assault units, and so on in the Russian Federation. Right now, some are being removed, others are being put into place. For failures, they remove people and appoint those who are ready to drive their personnel even harder to accomplish the mission. And as a result, as soon as the commander of a particular military unit is replaced, we can see it very clearly from our side. We always notice it right away. The intensity of assault operations immediately increases because they throw everyone into the fight. Mechanics, drivers, cooks, enemy soldiers who are responsible, all of them are driven into battle. Therefore, we have to state clearly and plainly, at this moment, the enemy has not lost the ability to conduct assault operations, just as Ukraine has not lost the ability to actively defend itself. As a result, the precondition that the war could end due to some kind of agreements, unfortunately at this moment, there are none. We have to prepare for a long-term war. If something changes, well, something changes. What do I mean by that? Dictator Putin might eat an apple that gets stuck in his throat and he dies. So Putin dies, and one way or another, the political situation in the Russian Federation will change, which could affect how soon the war ends. Everything else, protecting and defending our country, fighting for the right to live, all of that rests on the shoulders of the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian soldiers who are carrying out their missions on the battlefield with weapons in hand. It is precisely the front that gives our military and political leadership the opportunity to secure additional funding for weapons, to receive more arms from our partners, and to have the kinds of discussions that can truly allow Ukraine to be strong and to endure.
Yuri, thank you for the detailed, exclusive information from Kupyansk. And thank you for your service, for the work you are doing in the combat zone. Yuri Fedorenko, commander of the 429th Separate Achilles Unmanned Systems Regiment, was with us on the line. And we were discussing the situation in Kupyansk, where today, the Ukrainian Defense Forces carried out an operation to clear the city of Russian occupiers and to encircle Russian troops. There. And now to other topics of the day. Despite the intensity of attacks by the Russian army, Ukraine's defense forces are successfully thwarting the enemy's plans. On the Huliaipol bridgehead near Dobropolia, fighters from the 33rd Separate Assault Regiment stopped an attempted Russian breakthrough, eliminating 14 soldiers and destroying 4 motorcycles and a truck. The enemy once again failed to advance. A costly multi-purpose An-26 aircraft and 2 radar stations were destroyed by a special unit of the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, Ghosts. On December 10th and 11th, a military transport aircraft that the Russians were preparing for takeoff was hit in temporarily occupied Crimea. They had even already started the engines. A direct hit put it out of commission. 2 key radar stations that supported the operation of Russian S-300 and S-400 systems were also destroyed. 1,400 Russian occupiers were eliminated over the past day. The defense forces of Ukraine. Thus, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the total losses of the Russian Federation's army since the start of the full-scale war have exceeded 1,186,000 military personnel. In addition, the day before, Ukrainian defenders destroyed 1 enemy aircraft, 2 tanks, 6 armored combat vehicles, 16 artillery pieces, 2 multiple rocket launch systems, 3 air defense systems, and a Centurion. 107 units of automotive equipment. The United States of America may help Ukraine with security guarantees. According to US President Donald Trump, this is an important factor for ending Russia's war against Ukraine. As soon as tomorrow, December 13th, the US, Ukraine, and EU countries will discuss the key provisions of the draft peace plan in Paris. National security advisors from Ukraine, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom will take part in the meeting. Donald Trump stated that the United States will also send its representative. In addition, Volodymyr Zelensky and European leaders want to have a phone conversation with the US president this weekend. On
Saturday, a meeting will take place. We'll see if we will participate. Tentatively, we've agreed. If I think there is a good chance of achieving a result, we believe this needs to be completed.
Donald Trump is the only world leader capable of persuading the Russian dictator Putin to engage in real peace talks. This was stated by NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. According to him, the Kremlin only enters into dialogue when it is beneficial to them, and it is impossible to predict the timing of a possible agreement. However, Rutte also noted that if the United States and European capitals form a unified position and present it to Moscow, this could become a critical moment.
President Trump wants to put an end to the bloodshed right now. And only he can make Putin sit down at the negotiating table. So let's put Putin to the test. Let's see if he really wants peace, or if he prefers for the fighting to continue.
Americans and Europeans are looking for a final goal that will show that Russia has failed to achieve its strategic objectives in its war against Ukraine. This was stated by Finnish President Alexander Stubb. He noted that it is important for the Russian Federation not to achieve its goals, and for Ukraine to preserve its independence and become a member of the European Union.
Still believe that there are 3 key issues on which this entire peace agreement depends. One of them is territory, and only Ukrainians can decide this. The second is security guarantees, and here Americans and Europeans need to be very firm. And the third is the reconstruction of Ukraine, in which we must help as much as possible. Alexander Stubb, President of Finland.
The European Union remains steadfast in its commitment to help Ukraine achieve a just and lasting peace. And any future agreement must not contain loopholes or conditions that could lead to a new war. This was stated by the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. She confirmed that she held consultations with representatives. The coalition of willing countries and security guarantees remain central elements of these negotiations. Thus, the positions of Kyiv, Washington, and Brussels are now as closely aligned as possible. Allies are working to ensure that the peace after the war is reliable, not temporary, and that Russia can no longer threaten Ukraine.
Despite the pressure, we remain absolutely steadfast in our goal of achieving a just and lasting peace for Ukraine. Lasting means that any peace agreement must not contain the seeds of future conflicts or destabilize the broader architecture of European security. We also discussed the need for reliable security guarantees. I informed the leaders about our work to secure funding for Ukraine. For 2026 to 2027, our proposals are already on the table and their urgency is clear to everyone. Next week will be decisive. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, on the social network X.
Subscribe to The Gaze and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.